friends, it's Chloe. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. I was not totally planning on filming a video today, but I'm just not having a great week, if we're being totally honest, and I was thinking that maybe filming a video that would make me feel happy might be a good idea. I had initially thought about doing kind of a most disappointing or the worst books of the year. I don't think that will make me feel better, to be honest. I think it might just make me feel worse. So what I'm doing instead in this video is I wanted to share some of the books that didn't quite make it on to my top 10 favorites list, but that were really, really close. I'm gonna keep this a little bit shorter, a little bit lighter, but I'll let you know what the book is. I'll give you a really brief synopsis, and I'll just let you know why I loved it or why it stuck with me. And hopefully you can find something here that maybe you wanna add to your TBR as well. If you are not subscribed already, please do so below. It means a lot. And yeah, let's just get right into it. The first book on my list, which I actually think I talked about in my first ever wrap up on BookTube, is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, A Dangerous Trans Girl's Confabulous Memoir by thom. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this book, which is unfortunate because, as indicated by the fact that it's on this list, it's really excellent. I would like everybody to observe the cover of this book, which is artwork, but this book is about a young trans woman who moves to another city from her hometown and basically joins a group of trans women and trans femmes who basically decide that they're going to become kind of vigilantes and enact violence against the cis men who have basically harassed and committed violence against them. So they call themselves the Lipstick Lacerators, which is incredible, and basically go avenge the trans women that have faced violence at the hands of these men. This book is just so cool for so many reasons. There are elements of magic. It is kind of like an urban fantasy, but also just the way that it takes the trope of trans people being on the receiving end of violence. And this book is like revenge, basically. And I'm super here for it. It's a pretty quick read. It is by a trans author, and it is something that I would highly recommend everybody to read. The second book on this list is Slay by Brittney Morris, one of the few YA books in 2020 that really, really stuck with me, about a young teenage Black girl who basically has created her own video game, her own RPG role-playing game that is dedicated to Black people and providing a safe space for Black people, and is really grounded in different elements of Black tradition and Black culture. That was Patty shaking. Nobody knows that she's the one who's created this game, and somebody has invaded this space in this book, and she's basically trying to figure out who it is and get them out to be able to maintain this safe space. And at the same time, you know, she's in high school and there's drama with her friends and drama with her boyfriend and lots of other things going on. Part of the reason I think why this book is on this list is because it surprised me so much. I did not expect to love a book that was really centered around kind of video games, but it was just really, really fun. Kind of the scenes that you get that are set inside the video games I thought were really cool, and the way that this book explores themes about safe spaces and about spaces that are dedicated to and specifically for folks who are systemically oppressed, as well as misogynoir and these very specific instances of sexism experienced by Black women. So I would highly recommend this. It was definitely one of my favorite YAs of 2020. The third book on this list is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I've talked about this book a couple times. It was in my books that make good gifts video, because I genuinely do believe that this is a book that everybody would benefit from reading. The author of this book is an Indigenous woman. She is also a professor and a scientist. And in this book, which I think at its core is kind of like a nature essays book, but really is kind of trying to merge traditional Indigenous knowledge and teachings related to the earth and related to plants with these kind of more scientific Western ways of knowing, and bringing these two things together. Again, another book that I did not expect to love as much as I did. I'd heard lots of people talk about it, but the people that I had heard talking about it were like the scientists or the gardeners, but it really just is kind of a really really perspective changing book, and one that is best consumed slowly and over time. Like, it's one where it's awesome to kind of just pick up an essay, read it, think about it, put it down, come back to it later. But I think everybody has something to gain from reading this book. The fourth book on this list is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel detailing the very beginnings of a romance between Nick and Charlie, who are two high school boys. This book is like the softest, cutest, most adorable queer graphic love story. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's just adorable. The illustrations, the art style are super, super cute and gorgeous. Volume 1 is really kind of, again, those first beginnings of a relationship, of romantic feelings between these two boys who start off as friends, one of whom is kind of like a rugby player jock who has never had feelings for another boy before, and the other of whom is a kind of band geek who prior to the beginning of the story has come out as gay. So sweet, so wholesome, so cute, so perfect. I cried a lot. The 5th book on this list is Empire of Wild by Cherie Dimaline. Cherie Dimaline's other book, The Marrow Thieves, I think is the very first book that I talk about in my actual favorites of 2020 video, and I was really kind of torn about whether to include this one or The Marrow Thieves on this list, because truly, like, both of these are two of my favorite books ever, but I just felt like I had to pick one. Whereas The Marrow Thieves is a YA book, Empire of Wild is an adult supernatural thriller about a Métis woman whose husband disappears. They get in a fight one day, he leaves their house and he never comes back, and she's basically spent the past year of her life looking for him, and one day she rolls up to this weird tent in a Walmart parking lot, goes inside to find this kind of like traveling church ministry, and her husband is the reverend and he doesn't recognize her. And it just kind of gets weirder and weirder from there. The Rougarou, who is like a werewolf creature from Métis stories, is incorporated into this book. You've got, again, kind of this like social commentary around colonialism, around natural resource extraction, which again, something you kind of also get in The Marrow Thieves as well. The characters in this book, I think, are so fleshed out. I think the hook at the beginning of kind of she finds her husband as a reverend in a traveling ministry and he doesn't remember who she is like a really good hook, and really like, ooh, what is that? And then it doesn't follow that linear path though. It kind of just gets like weirder and weirder and more twisty, but I really enjoyed this book. Next, I wanted to talk quickly about The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, another book that was in my books that make good gifts video. This is a romance between Lucy and Joshua, who both work as executive assistants for co-CEOs at a book publishing company. The companies have recently merged, and basically they spend all day at work hating each other and playing games to demonstrate how much they hate each other. Sparks fly, etc., etc. It's an enemies to lovers romance. 2020 is kind of the year that I dipped my toes into the genre of adult contemporary romance and realized that I actually really, really liked it. And The Hating Game was one of the first of these books, which is why it's on this list, because I feel like it was the one that kind of opened the door up to the genre for me. This book is just really sweet. It's like rom-com in book form. The characters are super lovable, super quirky. The steam factor, it was just all like, it just all worked for me in that very much like romantic comedy feel good sort of way, you know what I mean? And it actually is being made into a movie right now, so it all kind of makes sense. The next book on this list is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. This is another contemporary romance that is basically like a gender-swapped Pretty Woman. We have our main woman character, Stella, who is autistic and views herself as someone who really struggles with relationships and with sex, so basically hires Michael, who is a sex worker, to teach her how to be good at these things. And inevitably things happen, and it is hard to keep that type of relationship not romantic, I guess. I think having the representation of an autistic woman, both the main character as well as the author of the book, and especially in the context of a romance, was awesome. This book has some of like the best steam, I think, in a romance book that I read in 2020. It is very graphic, I think it's fair to say, so just like be aware of that. If you don't like that, you probably won't like this book, and if you do like that, you probably really will like this book. My boss read this book after watching one of my videos. I didn't realize that was the recommendation she was going to pick, and a good friend also on my recommendation listened to the audiobook of this at her work, and I think regretted that. A really fun, cute, steamy romance that I really, really enjoyed and thought was really good, so that's that. Number 8 on this list is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is a quite short book, maybe more like a novella, about a woman in Japan who works and has worked for a very long time at a convenience store and is very happy working at this convenience store. It's what she wants to do and what she loves doing, but it's basically hearing society and her family tell her that she should be aspiring to bigger and better things, that she should be getting a new job, that she should be getting married and having a family. I loved the way this book kind of balanced these darker and more serious themes around kind of societal expectations and what makes a quote-unquote good person, and a woman who is really struggling mentally and emotionally with kind of these lighter elements of being set almost entirely in a convenience store and just some really kind of wacky and absurd plot points, again, around the fact that it's in a convenience store. I just thought it was quite quirky, but also quite dark. Yeah, I think had a lot to say in quite a short book about who and what we value in a society and the expectations that we place on people, and the fact that not everybody needs to be aspiring to certain things, certain life standards or milestones in order to be like a happy and valued member of society. Number 9 on this list is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, another really easy 5-star read for me. This is a book told in verse about a mixed race, black, gay British boy. We follow him right from his quite young childhood up until he enters university, joins his university's drag society, and realizes a drag character kind of based on his own lived experience and his own history. This is just a really, really fun and emotional and really beautifully written drag origin story that talks about everything from blackness to queerness to our main character's experience with being mixed race, and at kind of that middle sticking tension point between two different cultures. And this book's just fantastic. I've heard the audiobook is great. I read the ebook, but is one that I would highly recommend. A drag origin story. I don't know what more I need to tell you about that. 10th book on this list is Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. This is a kind of fictional memoir infused with elements of magical realism. Is basically a story about a teenage wizard who is a poor black girl growing up, again, at these multiple kind of points of oppression and inequality, and basically at these different points in her life, she uses magic as a form of resilience and perseverance to kind of get her through these really tough times. The experience of someone living a really difficult life and using either real or imagined magic to get them through it, and kind of taking that story of struggle, and I think a story that we read quite often, and infusing bits of magic into it in a really beautiful way. I don't feel like I'm really doing this book justice by talking about it, but basically this is one that I would, again, highly recommend to everybody. I think it's a really important book, a really beautiful book, a really, really uniquely told book, and then it's kind of told through these different lessons of wizardry and lessons of magic as she's going through her life. Another one I would really, really highly recommend. And the final book on this list, number 11, we have got Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. Many people have probably heard this book pitched at this point as Black Bridget Jones. I think suffice to say that doesn't really do this book justice. Queenie is about our main character named Queenie, who is a black British woman who basically is having a tough time, is making a lot of objectively poor decisions that are sending her life into disarray. She is having relationships with crappy men. She's not doing great at her job. And she's also living as a black woman in a society that is not super kind to black women. So we're basically following Queenie throughout this time in her life where she's really struggling with her mental health. She's struggling with her relationships with friends and family. It's simultaneously this really heartbreaking story of mental illness and of experiences of inequality, while also following a character that is so fundamentally lovable. Kind of this dark, emotional, but also really humorous book. That's Queenie. So there we have it. There I have thrown at you in not a particularly detailed synopsis and not excellent reviews by any means, but I just wanted to put it out there. These are 11 books that brought me joy, brought me happiness, brought me emotions and feelings in the year of 2020. They didn't manage to make it quite on my top 10 favorites list. Just wanted to give them a little bit of airtime, a little bit of space, let it be known that they are books that I also loved. Let me know if you've read any of these or any of your favorites of 2020, or any books that you think I would like based on the books that I just shared. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have an excellent day, and I will see you next time. Bye.